Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Rigi?
Here.
We're on? Okay. Director Chacon? Director Rigi?
Here.
Director Hawkins?
Here.
Director Oscui?
Here.
Director Vasquez?
Present.
Director Camacho Rodriguez?
Here.
President Apodaca?
Here. Director Hawkins, would you lead us in the invocation? And Director Rigi, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for allowing us to meet like this in this forum. Please bless all those that are in this building and on their way to this building, and please bless those that wish they were in this building. And please watch over the board as we have to make some tough decisions, and as we go through this, give us the guidance and the knowledge that we will need to perform for Central Basin. And then we also want to think about the family of Kobe Bryant. They are going through some tough times, and that is kind of our local venue with the people right here. And maybe you'll watch over them. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Our flag is bright in color, brilliant in courage, and firm in faith. To these let us add our sincere pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated.
Certification.
The agenda was posted.
Okay. Public comments and presentations, do we have any? I guess not. Okay. I'm going to call the order of going into closed session first.
I think
Mr.
we have
Chairman?
welcome comments. Welcome. Items number 3.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, number 3. Appointment of general manager. Okay,
Move to defer that item to closed session.
Second.
roll call?
Director Chacon? Director Rigi?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
Director Camacho Rodriguez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Are we going to have to move to the closed session now?
And then we go into closed session.
Mr. O'Neill?
Okay. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, and as identified on item 4.
Counselor, would you please report out on the closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board met pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, conference with legal counsel concerning public employee performance evaluation, public employee employment, and public employee discipline, dismissal, release. Discussion was had by the board, instruction was given to counsel, and at this point, I can report that with regards to the acting general manager position, motion was made by Director Vasquez and seconded by Director Chacon for certain board members to reach out to certain individuals concerning acting as the interim general manager, but no decision has been made on that appointment at this time. That concludes my closed session report.
Thank you, Counselor. Moving on, it is my understanding that we agreed, the majority of the board agreed to a special meeting today for the sole purpose of discussing what we just discussed, which was the appointment of acting general manager. But 10 minutes before the time, this agenda was added as a supplemental. And I'm looking at this agenda. There is nothing in here that I see that requires action today. All these items are either informational or they can wait. There are 2 items that have impact, financial impact, and those need to be referred back to the admin and finance subcommittee to be considered.
Mr. Chairman, we have a number of items on the agenda that require action, including an item that dates back to September.
Which one is that?
That needs to be considered.
Which one is that?
So I would like to go ahead and move forward with this agenda. We make a commitment to serve on this board, to set aside the time to properly go through each of these items. Unfortunately, these board meetings have come to an end abruptly because we have directors here that are unwilling to make decisions to move this agency forward. So I would go ahead and suggest that we move forward with this agenda, which is item number 5, which is MWD activities. And I'd like to go ahead and proceed with that. Thank you.
Which item was that from September that you identified?
Again, we need to move forward with the agenda.
No, I asked you which item you referred to that was from September.
The item is actually the minutes for the agenda, which involve a lawsuit that is pending against Central Basin. And those minutes are very critical for us to consider because what occurred at that meeting is an item that is in litigation. So we need to have a record of what was discussed that day, and that dates back to September. But that's not, again, the
So
only
the
item.
record is in front of us? Are you asking for approval of the minutes? Is that?
No, I'm actually not asking for approval of the minutes. I'm asking to move forward with the entire agenda. It's 11 o'clock. It's 6 minutes after 11. And I'd like to go ahead and proceed with the remainder of the agenda.
Well, look, the
Thank you.
commitment from the majority of the board was to stay here for the appointment position and a closed session discussion. That was the commitment. It was changed 10 minutes before the deadline, the 24-hour deadline, to add all of these items. And quite frankly, I did not commit myself to do that.
Can I add a comment, please?
Yes, please, go ahead.
No,
Yes.
I'm the chair for the time being, and I'll make sure that I'll hear everyone.
Thank you.
But I'll do it in an orderly manner.
Thank
What happened
you.
to the chairman?
Thank you.
John, what happened to the chairman?
I don't know.
There was-
Apparently he's left.
He didn't have another accident, did he?
Okay.
I'm
Very
just
nice.
asking, because I know we've had 5 meetings, and out of the 5 meetings, he's always had accidents.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Did you have something?
So we all carve our day out to meet the responsibilities of our agency to the personnel here and our constituents. And so to just say that we were going to have this meeting just for one item when we did not get through the items on our regular scheduled meetings is not doing our due diligence. And we are all here, we have quorum, and this is our responsibility. It was our chosen responsibility. And so we need to move forward with the agenda as it is in front of us, and we're here. And so I would recommend to my colleagues that when you're scheduled to come into a scheduled meeting or emergency meeting, that you have the understanding that this is your commitment. So I'm here, I scheduled the whole day. If we're going to be here till 5, I don't have anything else pressing but this agenda.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to mention anything?
Well, I came here to vote or not vote on certain items here. I mean, I didn't come here for one item. So, you know, I'm ready to take action.
You ready to take action? Okay, fair enough. Let's take action. MWD report, very brief, please. Tammy. Good morning.
MWD activities update. January 3rd, state agency released a draft water resilience portfolio. Metropolitan Transportation Local Resources Committee and the governor's director for this portfolio, Nancy Vogel, came to Metropolitan to discuss further the elements on this portfolio. And included is a suite of recommended actions to help California cope with more extreme droughts and floods, declining fish populations, and aging infrastructure. This was in response to the governor's executive order on April 2019. So more information, more developments will continue to follow in that arena. Legislative affairs, on Friday, January 10th, the Governor Newsom, he had submitted his proposed budget. Metropolitan staff had shared some of the highlights with member agencies. And of particular interest, the proposed budget includes sections to address the climate change, water infrastructure, Sustainable Groundwater Management Program and the California Environmental Protection Agency. Also, lastly, on January 15th, the California Department of Water Resources posted a notice of preparation that will initiate the environmental impact report on the Delta Conveyance Project. So Metropolitan will continue to work forward in this arena as well to continue that proposed project and the
Thank you.
elements. You're welcome.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Item number 6, annual board reorganization. We don't have the president here, so
We don't have one?
The current president.
the current president, I suggest that we deal with this item at the next meeting.
What's the admin code on the present?
Sure, you have a provision in your administrative code that addresses how board officers are elected. The Municipal Water District Act says directors have to be elected in the first meeting in January of every odd-numbered year. This district, you have an admin code that says it happens every year, which is consistent with the water code. Your code goes on to say that if you don't have a majority, or if the board can't reach a majority vote for one individual to assume the office of president or vice president, and then it goes to a default, and that default, by default, if a majority is not reached, it goes to the board member with the highest seniority. If this board cannot reach a consensus on who the president would be, it would go to the board member with the longest tenure at the district. And my understanding, that's Director Apodaca. If the board can't reach a consensus on the vice president, or a majority on the vice president, it would go to, I believe, Director Hawkins has the second most tenure. And then if this happens again next year, if a majority can't be reached, then Director Hawkins would ascend to the presidency, and the director with the third most tenure would assume the role of vice president. I think I have a list, but I think that's Director Chacon.
So since we're on a rotation style and Director Apodaca is currently, so that would be the next person, which would be Mr. Hawkins if we're going on rotation.
Yes,
Because
but
the way that you're framing, I didn't read it like that.
Okay, the rotation only, or the rotation sequence only starts if the board cannot reach a majority on who the, let's use the office of president. If the board cannot reach a majority on who the president is, then you have this default provision in your code that it goes to the person with the longest tenure. I went back in anticipation of this and looked, and your minutes show that last January, I believe, Director Apodaca was elected president, so that default provision was not employed or did not kick in at that time, because there was an election. I have the minutes from February 25th, 2019. Mr. Apodaca was elected president. So he's your president right now until a new president is installed. If there is a vote for a new president and gets a majority vote, that person gets to be the new president. If there is no majority vote, the default provision kicks in, and this will be
Which is our admin code, is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
So-
I actually have the admin code
Thank
before
you.
me, and I'll read it because there seems to be, I'm not really sure where Mr. O'Neill's interpretation is coming from, but it's very clear here in our admin code that it says, "The board shall, at its required reorganization meeting each January," which unfortunately didn't occur because we had members of the board that walked out of the meeting and
Still
essentially
For your
ended
record. Still
the
January.
form. But it's not the regular meeting, it's a special
But it's a
meeting.
special meeting and it's agenda.
It says each regular meeting in January. Select the president and vice president by motion. So we go through that process. Only in the event the board is unable to agree on the selection of officers in any given year, then the position of president shall be filled by the most senior member of the board by a rotation basis. So that effectively excludes the current chairman because it's by rotation. However, I think the first order of business should be that we open it up for nominations.
I second that.
I have heard your input, and I have heard the advice of the council, and quite frankly, I have to rely on the advice of the council because he is a counselor. He knows law and I don't, and that's his interpretation.
But Director Skoury, I believe
Yes.
there was just a motion and a second made to open it up for nominations for
That was
board
in
officers.
response to the comment
Okay.
about but let's go ahead and do that if there are any nominations.
And please speak for yourself, because I read the admin code, and the admin code does not say that if we can't reach an agreement on a chair, that's not what the admin code says, that it does not reflect, again, that Director Apodaca stays. It actually reflects something very different. And it goes by rotation. The next person with the highest seniority is Director Phil Hawkins.
Would you like to respond to that, Councilor?
Sure. We've had 3 lawyers look at this in our firm. We've generated an opinion within our firm on this issue because we know it would be contentious. And our opinion is as follows. Each January, the board must hold a required reorganization meeting and select both the board president and vice president for a 1-year term. If the board can't agree on the selection of its president or vice president, then the board is thrown into a default process. The position of president shall be filled by the most senior member of the board by a rotation process for the 1-year period.
Mr. O'Neill, do we have admin code?
Sure.
So I'm just curious how you keep defaulting from our admin code to whatever it is that you see fit to continue your agenda?
Okay, I will.
And so our admin code is very clear, and if I'm supposed to honor the admin code, I would appreciate it that you honor the admin code as well.
Okay. Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I just want to assure the board I have no agenda. I'm trying to interpret your admin code. The admin code says as follows. At Part 2, Article 2, Section 2.2, Officers of the Board. The board shall, at its required reorganization meeting each January, which is, again, not specific to a special or a regular meeting, each January select the president and vice president by motion. Only in the event the board is unable to agree on the selection of officers in any given year, then the position of president shall be filled by the most senior member of the board by a rotation process. And I've reviewed the minutes for last January, and there was an election that elected Director Apodaca. Persons shall be appointed to the position of vice president in the same order for the period of time immediately preceding their appointment as president, only in the event the board is unable to agree on the selection of a director to serve as vice president. So you'll see the same rotation process in the event that there can't be a majority, or there is not a majority vote for one individual. That also defaults to the default process of rotation. In the event a director declines the position, if, for example, in this case, if someone, Director Apodaca, who is would rotate to the presidency under the default provision, if he declines that position, then that office shall fall to the director next in line in the rotation. Under this default process of selection of officers, once the director completes his or her full 1-year term as president or vice president, he or she shall be placed at the bottom of the rotation list, and all other directors shall move up the list. And there is a rest of the section on when members leave the board. If you'd like me to go through that, I can.
So you're choosing to not have us honor our own admin code?
No, Director, what I read to you was the code.
There's no need to respond to that. If there is a nomination, let's take the nomination, please.
Mr. Vice Chairman, before we go there, may I say something?
Please.
In all due respect to the member from the city of Santa Fe Springs that will be the 8th member of this body, we should defer the item until that person is seated and give that person due diligence in order to vote for the officers of this district.
That was, thank you, Mr. Origi. That was one consideration. The other consideration is that I mentioned because Director Apodaca is not here, if he chooses not to accept the position, because by default, if he cannot agree, by default, he will be the first in the rotation. What if he doesn't want to assume the responsibilities? We need a full board to make the right decision on this one.
Mr. Skoury, we need to take consideration of our constituents. If our directors choose to not be present in the moment, I'm not considering their personal agenda. We are here to meet the needs of our constituents, and we are all present and we have quorum, and the consideration of people who are not even here is really bad optics.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Vice Chairman, we are not all here. The 8th person is missing, and that person will be seated at the end of...
They have constituents as well.
Correct. And it's not an emergency item. The current president and vice president are sufficient to run this body. There's not an emergency item to replace the president at this time.
Yeah.
It can
I
be
make a
deferred.
motion that we go with Leticia Vasquez for president.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, roll call.
Director Chacon?
Yes.
Director Origi?
No.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
No.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
Director Camacho Rodriguez?
Yes.
President Apodaca? Motion does not pass.
Okay.
Move to defer the item to the next
Second.
regular meeting.
Well, we don't have a choice. Second.
No, excuse me, this process has not ended.
There's a motion.
The process in our admin code specifically says that if the nominations are over, are the nominations over? Obviously they are. Then, and I will read it directly from the admin code. Only in the event that the board is unable to agree on the selection of officers in any given year, then the position of president shall be filled by the most senior member of the board by a rotation basis. So the next person who has the most senior, who is the most senior member of this board by a rotation process is Director Phil Hawkins. Director Hawkins, would you accept?
No, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Would you accept
Hold on a
the,
second. Director,
excuse me, would you accept the position of chairman?
No, I'm running the meeting. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Hold on
He
a second.
declined.
So,
He declined.
okay.
He declined.
So Director Hawkins has essentially declined
I'm sorry, ma'am.
the
You're out of
position
order
of vice
because I'm running the
president.
meeting and you're not.
Now, the
you're out of
position
order.
goes to
Madam, you're out of
Director
order.
Art Chacon. Director
Madam,
Art Chacon,
you're
do
out
you
of order.
accept?
Madam, you're
Sure.
out of order.
Sure, you accept the position of chair?
This is ridiculous.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Why don't
All
you
right,
sit in
so
there and be the
the
attorney?
chairman of this board
We're
is
done.
Director Art Chacon. Thank you.
We're done.
For the record, Director Vasquez's interpretation of
Director Art
code
Chacon is now the chair of this board.
is improper, and if the tape's on, as set forth in the admin code at Part 2, Article 2, Organization and Board Officers, Section 2.2 describes this situation, and only in the event the board is unable to agree.
Gentlemen,
on
walk
selection
out
of
if you're not
officers.
staying for the meeting. Walk out.
I'm going to sit right here.
You're out of order.
Director Chacon, we need you to go ahead and go through the second process.
And also, for the record, we have lost a quorum